I always wonder, if it had rained that day, if my parents had argued, if there had been yelling, things breaking, would I remember that day differently? But no, that evening was completely quiet, so eerily normal that it was unsettling. I didn't know what I had expected. Maybe a clearer sign that my life was about to change forever. But all I got were gentle words, tired eyes, and a cold truth. My parents would no longer live together. At the time I was only 8 years old, wearing my favorite blue floral dress, clutching my worn-out stuffed bunny tightly as I sat on the living room couch. In front of me was my mother, Susan, her blonde hair tied up in a bun as always, her face looking paler than usual without makeup. My father, David, still in his work shirt but without a tie, looking exhausted. They sat apart, a space between them as if an invisible boundary had long divided them. Only today, they were finally acknowledging it. "Maggie, sweetheart." My mother spoke first, her voice soft, as if trying not to scare me. "Your father and I have something to tell you." I tightened my grip on my stuffed bunny, looking at both of them, sensing that something was wrong but unable to put it into words. "We're not going to live together anymore," my father continued, his gaze warm but heavy with fatigue. "But don't worry, you'll still have both of us. No shouting, no tears, no accusations. Just a decision, as final as shutting a book after finishing the last page." They told me that my mother would stay in the house while my father would move into an apartment not too far away. I would stay with my mother from Monday to Friday and spend the weekends with my father. Everything had been arranged. So neatly. So logically. I didn't cry. Maybe I was too young to understand that my world had just been split in two. Or maybe I had already grown used to their distance without realizing it. But at that moment, I felt something inside me crack. A small fracture, one that would only grow wider with time. After that night, my father moved out. My mother still smiled at me in the mornings, still brushed my hair before school. My father still picked me up every weekend, still bought me ice cream on hot summer days. Nothing seemed to change too much, but deep down, I knew everything was different. And I was about to learn that sometimes, the quietest changes are the ones that scare you the most. Life after the divorce wasn't as bad as I had feared. My father still picked me up every weekend, and we slowly settled into a new rhythm. Saturday mornings he took me to a small cafe near his place for waffles, where he sipped black coffee while I played with the powdered sugar on my plate. In the evenings we watched old movies on his couch, laughing as if nothing had ever changed. About a year after my father moved out, he started mentioning a woman named Lisa. At first it was just in passing. "Lisa works at the hospital near my place, you know? She's really great." Then her name started coming up more often. And one day, my father told me he wanted me to meet her. The first time I met Lisa was at a small roadside diner. She had soft blue eyes and gentle brown hair, completely different from my mother's sharp features. Sitting next to her was a little boy, 3 years younger than me, with messy curls and mischievous eyes. "Hi, Maggie." Lisa smiled warmly at me, her eyes full of kindness, as if she had been waiting to meet me for a long time. "Your dad talks about you, all the time." The boy looked up from his plate of fries, still chewing. "Are you gonna be my sister?" I laughed. "I guess so." His name was Ethan, and from that moment, I knew I had a little brother. Not long after, my father married Lisa. The wedding was simple, but my father and Lisa did everything they could to make me feel like I was part of their special day. I helped Lisa pick out her dress, worked with Ethan on a short speech, and during the ceremony, my father looked at me with teary eyes and told me I would always be an important part of this new family. But on the other side, my mother was writing her own story. She met Jeffrey, a successful businessman with a polished smile and perfectly pressed suits. Unlike Lisa, who made an effort to bring me into their world, Jeffrey didn't seem too concerned about me. But my mother was different. She became happier, more vibrant, as if she had found something she had lost. And just a few months later, she told me she was having a baby. I remember that day, standing in the kitchen, watching her place a hand on her stomach, her eyes full of hope. "You're going to have a baby sister, Maggie. Isn't that exciting?" I nodded. But inside, I wasn't so sure. Everything changed after Emma was born. At first, I thought it was natural. My mother was busy with a newborn, feeding, sleepless nights, endless crying. I told myself it wasn't strange that she spent more time with Emma. I told myself that I was older now, that I didn't need her as much as before. But over time, I realized the distance between my mother and me wasn't just because of a newborn. The first time I truly felt forgotten was on a rainy October afternoon. That day was my first parent-teacher conference in high school. I stood at the school gate, watching as my classmates were picked up one by one. The crowd thinned, the sky darkened, and raindrops drizzled onto my coat. My homeroom teacher, Miss Taylor, stood beside me, glancing at her watch with concern. "Maggie, do you want me to call your mom?" she asked. I had already texted my mom earlier, but there was no reply. So, I nodded. 10 minutes later, Miss Taylor turned to me with an apologetic look. "Your mom said she forgot. Today is an important day for Emma. Her first vaccination appointment." I clenched the straps of my backpack, pressing my lips together. When my mom finally arrived nearly an hour later, she just gave me an awkward smile. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Emma was fussy, and I lost track of time." I stayed silent. But that wasn't the last time. On my 14th birthday, I woke up with excitement, just like every year. But when I walked downstairs, my mom was busy making Emma's bottle, and Jeffrey was glued to his phone, reading the news. No one said anything. I hesitated. "Mom, do you remember what today is?" She glanced at me, frowning slightly as if trying to recall. Then, she suddenly smiled. "Oh, it's Friday, right? I have to take Emma to her dentist appointment." My throat tightened. "No, Mom. Today is my birthday." Her face froze for a moment before she let out an uneasy laugh. "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Maggie. I've been so busy, I completely forgot. We'll celebrate this weekend, okay?" But the weekend came and there was no party, no cake, no gifts. I didn't bring it up again, and she never remembered. After that, I spent more and more time at my dad's house. Lisa always greeted me with a warm smile, and Ethan was excited every time I walked through the door. My dad never forgot my birthday, never forgot the important days in my life. Lisa always made sure my favorite snacks were in the fridge. There, I didn't have to fight for attention. One day, when I was practically living at my dad's house, he sat down next to me and said, "Maggie, I talked to your mom. I think you should live here permanently." I looked at him, waiting for an explanation, but he just stayed silent. I knew he didn't need to say it. And I knew why my mom was resisting. Because if I left, she would lose the child support. I officially moved in with my dad when I was 15. At first, my mom didn't argue too much. I think she felt relieved that she no longer had to deal with a teenage daughter while Emma took up all her attention. But I knew the real reason she hesitated. It was the money. Since I was still considered her dependent, my dad continued sending child support every month. But as I got closer to turning 18, things started to change. Even though I no longer lived with her, I still visited once a month. But every time I felt more like a stranger in the house that used to be mine. The older Emma got, the more spoiled she became, and I was nothing more than a guest. One afternoon, I was sitting at the kitchen table doing my homework when Emma, 8 years old at the time, walked in, her blue eyes twinkling with mischief. "Hey, Maggie." She tilted her head at me, her voice innocent but carrying something that sent a chill down my spine. "Dad says, you don't really belong here." I looked up from my notebook, my fingers tightening around my pencil. "What did you just say?" She shrugged, as if it didn't matter. "Dad says you're just a guest. One day, you'll stop coming, and then it'll just be the three of us. Dad, Mom, and me. You're only here because Mom needs the money." A sharp pain spread through my chest, but I didn't let it show. I didn't have to ask who had planted those words in her mind. Jeffrey had never considered me part of his family. I wasn't his daughter. I wasn't someone he had to provide for or care about. I tried to brush it off, but those words haunted me. And then, when I was close to turning 18, my mom made it clear that she agreed with Jeffrey. That day, I went to visit as usual, but instead of her usual indifferent greeting, she was already sitting at the dining table, her expression more serious than usual. Jeffrey leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "Maggie," my mom said, her voice sickly sweet. "Have you thought about moving out?" I frowned. "What do you mean?" Jeffrey shrugged, his gaze cold. "You'll be 18 next month. After that, your dad won't have to send child support anymore. And, to be honest, your mom and I think it's time for you to be independent." I looked at my mom, hoping she would object, hoping she would say they were just joking. But she stayed silent, avoiding my eyes. Turns out, to them I was nothing more than a number on a bank statement. I didn't argue. There was no point. I just stood up, walked out of that house, and never went back. When I told my dad and Lisa, they weren't surprised. They didn't need to ask to know what had happened, and unlike my mom, they truly wanted me there. When I told my dad I wanted to go to college, he didn't hesitate. "Lisa and I have been saving for you for years. You don't have to worry." I wanted to cry when I heard those words. Not because I was emotional about the money, but because, for the first time, I truly felt cared for. I left my mother's house right after my 18th birthday, carrying a suitcase of clothes and a few small keepsakes. But I didn't feel sad. Maybe I had been preparing for this moment for a long time. I knew I didn't belong there anymore. If I ever had in the first place. Life at my dad's house was much easier. No judgmental looks from Jeffrey, no whispers from Emma, no feeling like I was invisible in my own home. Lisa helped me find a part-time job at a small cafe in town, where I worked morning shifts before class. It wasn't an easy job. Waking up at 5 a.m., making hundreds of coffee orders a day, learning to smile even when customers were rude. But I liked it. Lisa said, "It was easy though in the beginning." Lisa did. In the evenings, I spent time in my room studying and planning for my future. I had been accepted into an in-state university's finance program with a partial scholarship, but I still needed to save money for living expenses. I wasn't worried though. My dad had promised to support me, and more importantly, I had learned how to take care of myself. Lisa always checked in to make sure I was eating properly and if I needed anything. Ethan, though now an annoying teenager obsessed with video games, was still a good little brother. But my mom? She never called. At first I waited. I thought maybe, one day, she would pick up the phone and ask how I was doing, if I was okay, if I needed anything. But my phone never rang with her name on the screen. No messages. No check-ins. On my 19th birthday, Lisa gave me a small cake, Ethan got me a hoodie, and my dad wrote me a handwritten letter telling me how proud he was of me. And my mom? Nothing. At night, I made the mistake of checking her Facebook. A bad habit I couldn't seem to break. Her page was filled with pictures of their perfect family. Jeffrey, my mom, Emma. Parties, vacations, bright happy smiles. I wasn't in a single photo. I had been erased from that picture a long time ago. I closed the app, turned off my phone, and went back to my books. I had plans of my own. I didn't need them anymore. 4 years of college passed faster than I expected. Early mornings making coffee for impatient customers, late nights studying until I passed out at my desk. It was all worth it when I walked across the stage to receive my degree in finance. My dad and Lisa were there at my graduation, along with Ethan, who was now a full head taller than me. My dad pulled me into a tight hug, his eyes shining with pride. "You did it, Maggie. I always knew you would." Right after graduation, I received a job offer from Lisa's brother Ryan, who owned an investment firm. I knew he had only agreed to interview me because of family connections, but I also knew he wouldn't have hired me if I wasn't qualified. I worked hard, proving myself through numbers and smart financial strategies. Within 2 years, I was promoted to senior financial analyst. Every month, I set aside a portion of my income into savings, working toward my biggest goal: buying my own home. Life was good. Peaceful, stable, and completely free of the past. But then, my mother came back. For the first time in 9 years, I got a call from her. Her number was still in my contacts, but I had never seen it appear on my screen in all that time. I hesitated for a few seconds before answering. "Maggie, sweetheart." Her voice was sweet, casual, as if we had been talking regularly. "I've been thinking about you a lot lately. How are you? I miss you so much." I said nothing. A part of me wanted to laugh. 9 years of silence, and now she missed me? "I want you to come over for dinner this Sunday," she continued, her tone eager. "It's been so long since our family was together." Family? I wanted to ask if I was still considered part of that family, but instead I simply said, "Okay." I wasn't sure why I agreed, maybe curiosity. Maybe I wanted to see what she really wanted. That Sunday, I drove my new sedan to her house. When Emma opened the door, she looked me up and down, her eyes flashing with something unreadable. "New car?" she asked, as if that was the most important thing. I didn't respond, I just stepped inside. Everything looked the same. Family pictures covering the walls, but not a single one with me in them. Dinner felt painfully fake. My mother kept bringing up my job, my salary, the things I owned, and then finally, as our plates were nearly empty, she smiled at me. The same smile I had seen so many times before. The smile of someone about to ask for something. "Maggie, I'm so proud of you," she said sweetly, her voice dripping with meaning. "You've worked so hard and built a great career. I know you must have a pretty big savings by now." I set my fork down. So this was the real reason she invited me over? Emma tilted her head, her voice dripping with fake innocence. "You know, I'm about to graduate college. I'm looking for an apartment downtown, but the rent is so expensive." My mother nodded in agreement. "If you could help your sister a little, it would make things so much easier. Family is supposed to support each other, right?" I looked at my mother, then at Emma. After 9 years, they had come to me. Not because they missed me, but because they wanted my money. I had seen this coming. From the moment my mother called to invite me to dinner, I knew she didn't actually want a family reunion. But, even though I had prepared myself, I still felt the slow burn of anger rising inside me. I placed my fork down on my plate and looked straight at my mother. "And how exactly do you want me to help Emma?" She smiled. The same smile I had seen countless times before. Sweet, but calculating. "I know you've saved up quite a bit. You don't need to use it right away, do you? If you could help your sister with rent, or better yet, contribute toward buying her an apartment, that would be wonderful." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "You want me to give Emma my savings?" Emma batted her lashes, trying to look cute. "It's just a small amount, sis. I'll pay you back once I settle into my job." I didn't believe a single word of that. "No," I said firmly, pushing my chair back. "That money is mine, and I worked hard for it. I'm not giving it to anyone." My mother looked at me as if I had just said something so absurd it was laughable. "Maggie, you're acting like this is a big deal. You have a good job, a steady income. Your sister is just starting out. She needs help." I crossed my arms, keeping my voice as calm as possible. "Emma has you and Jeffrey to take care of her. You've spent years funding her life. What about me? When was the last time you helped me?" The air in the room grew tense. Emma slumped back in her chair, arms crossed in irritation. "You're so selfish," she muttered. I turned to my mother. "When was the last time you called me before last week?" She took a sip of water, avoiding my eyes. "Maggie, Don't make a big deal out of this. Families help each other. I raised you for years. Are you really saying you can't give back a little to your sister? I let out a bitter laugh. Raised me? You forgot my 14th birthday. You forgot my parent-teacher conferences. You forgot I even existed the moment Emma was born. And now you remember me? When you need money? Emma suddenly shot up from her chair, her voice shrill. You're so petty. You have so much money and you can't even help me out a little? I shook my head, grabbing my bag. No. And if this is the real reason you wanted to see me, then I think we have nothing left to say. My mother slammed her hand on the table, the sweetness in her voice completely gone. You're being selfish, Maggie. You make good money. You don't need it right now. Your sister needs it more than you do. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice steady. No, and you need to stop trying to manipulate me with the whole family excuse. I've seen this game before. Without waiting for another word, I turned and walked out of that house. Again. And probably for good. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought that after being so blatantly rejected, my mother and Emma would finally understand that I wasn't the naive girl they could manipulate anymore. But I was wrong. 2 weeks after that dinner, I left for a business trip. My company sent me to Chicago for a 10-day financial conference. I left the city feeling relieved, enjoying the break from all the unnecessary family drama. Everything went smoothly. Until day 8. After wrapping up a meeting, I checked my phone and instantly felt my heart stop. Bank notifications. Transfer $2,000. Transfer minus $3,500. Transfer $5,000. A wave of panic shot through me. I opened my banking app and saw that a large sum of money had been withdrawn from my savings account. Over $10,000 in total. The recipient's name? Patricia Monroe. My mother. My hands shook as I immediately called the bank. After confirming that I had not authorized these transactions, I dialed my mother's number. The phone rang 3 times before she answered. Maggie, sweetheart, I was just about to call you. Her voice was overly sweet, as if nothing had happened. I clenched my teeth, trying to stay calm. What did you do to my account? A pause, then a light laugh. Oh, so you saw it. My entire body went cold. How did you do it? She chuckled, as if I had asked a silly question. Do you remember when I visited your apartment the other week? When I said I needed to use the bathroom? Well, I just needed a few minutes to copy your key. I froze, anger erupting in my chest. You broke into my apartment and stole my money? My mother sighed, her voice shifting into fake patience. Don't say it like that, Maggie. I was just helping Emma. She needs a proper place to start her life after graduation, and you have the means to help. How can you be so selfish as to refuse your own sister? I tightened my grip on my phone. Return the money. Now. Or I'll call the police. She let out a laugh. This time, a mocking one. Oh, come on, Maggie, you wouldn't do that. You wouldn't actually press charges against your own mother, would you? She didn't know that this time, she had gone too far. I spent the entire night after that call thinking. A part of me wanted to believe she would realize her mistake and return the money on her own, without me having to escalate things. But I knew that would never happen. The next morning, I went straight to the police station. I filed a formal complaint against Patricia Monroe, my biological mother, for theft and financial fraud. I provided all the evidence, bank statements, text messages, call logs, and most importantly, a recording of our conversation from the night before. In it, she openly admitted to breaking into my apartment, copying my key, and withdrawing money from my account without my consent. The officer taking my report hesitated. Are you sure you want to go through with this? She's still your mother. I looked him straight in the eye and nodded. I'm sure. 2 days later, I received a call from Jeffrey. I hadn't saved his number, but I recognized that deep, authoritative voice immediately. Maggie. he started, sounding calm but still commanding. "You're not seriously going to press charges against your own mother, are you? You know what kind of consequences this could have." I crossed my arms, keeping my tone even. "If she returns all the money immediately, I'll drop the case." A long silence. Then he let out a humorless chuckle. "You can't do this to your mother. Do you know she's been crying for days? She raised you, sacrificed so much for you. And now you're throwing her in jail over a little money?" I clenched my phone, the familiar sting of manipulation creeping in. But this time, I didn't let it take hold. She chose to steal from me. Now she has to deal with the consequences. This isn't a little money. This is my life savings. You really have no compassion, do you? Jeffrey lowered his voice, applying pressure. "We're family." I let out a cold laugh. "Family? Where were you when I needed one?" When he realized I wasn't budging, Jeffrey hung up without another word. The trial moved quickly. There was too much evidence against my mother. The judge found her guilty of financial theft, but since it was her first offense, she was given probation instead of jail time. However, she was ordered to repay every cent within 30 days. Right after the trial, I took one more important step. I filed a restraining order against both my mother and Jeffrey. I had closed this door for good. 30 days later, the stolen money was transferred back into my account. I wasn't surprised that my mother complied. She had no other choice. As I checked my bank balance, I felt a strange sense of relief. Not because I had my money back, but because I had regained control over my life. For the first time in years, I felt truly free. With my money secured, I resumed my plans to buy a house, as if nothing had happened. I found a charming colonial-style home in a quiet neighborhood, just 15 minutes from my dad's house. It wasn't huge, but it had a spacious backyard, perfect for barbecues, and a cozy living room where I could host the people who truly mattered. On closing day, my dad came with me. As the agent handed over the paperwork, he gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze, a proud smile on his face. "I always knew you'd do it," he said. Lisa and Ethan were just as excited. Lisa flooded my inbox with furniture links, while Ethan, now a tall young man, promised to help me move in free of charge. The next few days were filled with cardboard boxes, rolls of packing tape, and laughter as my dad and Lisa helped me assemble furniture. This was my real family. Not the people who abandoned me, not the ones who used me, but the ones who had stood by me when I needed them the most. My mother kept trying to reach out. She sent messages, left voicemails, even asked mutual acquaintances to speak on her behalf. At first, her tone remained gentle, pretending as if nothing had happened. "Maggie, I know you're angry, but I'm still your mother. Can we talk?" When I didn't respond, she switched tactics. Guilt-tripping. Even blaming me. "Maggie, are you really this cruel? You're cutting off your own mother over a few measly dollars?" I didn't reply. I had learned my lesson. On the day I moved into my new home, I threw a small housewarming party. My dad brought wine, Lisa baked a cake, and Ethan helped me set up my new TV. As we celebrated together, I realized something important. Family isn't defined by blood. Family is made up of the people who love and respect you. And in the end, I had found mine. Maggie's story is a powerful reminder that true family isn't determined by blood, but by love, respect, and support. Not everyone is born into a family that offers unconditional love. Some people have to fight to break free from manipulation and exploitation by their own relatives. But what matters most is learning to stand on your own, protect yourself, and seek out relationships that truly deserve you. In the end, real family is made up of the people who stand by you when you need them the most. Not those who only appear when they need something from you. What do you think about Maggie's story? Have you ever experienced something similar or know someone who has been taken advantage of by their own family? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to follow the channel for more meaningful stories about family and life.